Hi, how you doing? Thank you so much for being here today. I'm instructor Dwayne Jenkins. In today's video lesson, we are going to be looking at ways to keep your guitar in tune with the whammy bar. I had a viewer, Nano, ask me about that, and he asked me to make a video, and I always do that for people who ask me about a video, so told him I'd make him a video. So what we're going to do is make a video today about how to keep a guitar with the whammy bar in tune. A guitar similar to this, it doesn't have the locking nut. But there's some things you can do to help keep it in tune for the most part. A few tricks of the trade, so to speak. So if you have a guitar like that and you're interested in learning how to keep it in tune while using the whammy bar, stick around and I'll show you how.
Audio Jungle.
Okay, so I believe you told me, Nano had mentioned to me that he had a guitar. It was a Jackson, I think JS11. I looked it up online. It looks like it's basically your kind of like a Fender style guitar. It's got a bridge with the tremolo bar on it and your standard non-locking nut like that. Okay, this is an Ibanez Geo, but it's real similar to what you have there. So there's a couple things that you can do. Now, first of all, most of the part, the guitar should pretty much stay in tune as it is. It's kind of designed that way. You can, use the whammy bar forward a little bit, and it should come back and rest on the body of the guitar and kind of go back to being stabilized and in tune right here. Okay. These types of guitars aren't really designed to be, using the whammy bar a lot. They're just not designed for that because they don't have the locking nut. Okay. Now, when guitars go out of tune without the locking nut, there's a reason for that, okay? And the main thing you want to remember is why that is. You got to learn why it is, and that's why, and that way you can kind of adjust your guitar to keep it from staying in tune better, okay? So the number one reason why guitars go out of tune when you use the whammy bar without the locking nut is because of friction, okay? The strings are touching the nut here, they're touching the string trees here on the fretboard, on the headstock, and then they're touching, of course, the tuning keys, okay? And so when you try to use the whammy bar, the string gets caught in the nut. That's a real common thing, and then when it goes back to its regular tension, it's either sharp or flat. That's a pretty common thing that happens. So there's a couple things that you can do to help reduce the amount of friction, okay? Number one, what I did on this guitar, as you can see, I put this string tree that's more of a roller like this, okay? And what that does, if you can see it, it allows the string to roll underneath that real smooth, okay? So that's one of the points where you get friction is those string trees. Those are called string trees, and they're designed to hold the strings down and keep the guitar in tune. So, and usually on those kind of guitars, Fenders and stuff, they have those ones that are kind of touch the string, and they're really not that great for trying to use the whammy bar a lot. So what I would recommend doing is switch those out, okay? They just have a little screw in them. You can switch those out and get those on eBay. They're real inexpensive. I would get you a couple of those rollers. They're just going to be able to reduce the amount of friction right there on the string tree better, okay? The second thing that you can do is something that's been done for years by a lot of guitar players, is take some graphite and put it in the nut itself, right here in the nut where the strings go through, okay? Like a pencil, for instance. You just take a pencil, especially if you have a black nut like this, you could just take a pencil and put some, rub it through there, and it's gonna put graphite, because your lead on your pencil is graphite, and you put it in there, and it'll help guide the strings through the nut better so they won't get caught up, okay? Another thing you can do is what I use is this stuff called Big Ben's Nut Sauce, okay? It's just basically a lubricant, and it comes with a little applicator. They have some different ones. I think this is their smallest one. But see, you can see it comes with a little applicator, and then it's kind of like almost like a little syringe, and you put it right there in the slots where the strings go through, okay? And that's going to help lubricate the strings to keep from getting caught in the nut, okay? Another thing that I did, I don't recommend you doing this, but it's something you can do too, if you feel like it, is I took some sandpaper, just a very, very small thing, and I kind of sanded the nuts out just a hair. You don't want to really do this if you're not confident in doing it, because if you take out too much, then you got to replace the nuts. So I wouldn't really recommend doing this, but I'm just giving you this as an example of what you can do. Or you could take a string and just run it through the nut a little bit, okay? And what it does is widens the nut out just a hair in order for those strings to slide through there better, okay? So if you're not confident, I wouldn't recommend doing that if you're not confident in doing it, but I'm just mentioning to what I did that helped me to keep the guitar in tune better. But it's just, what you want to do is reduce the amount of friction, okay? That's the main thing that's causing the guitar to go out of tune when you use the whammy bar on a regular, like a Fender Strat or the Jackson that you have. This is very similar. This is an Ibanez Geo. It's a very similar thing. Okay, so by doing these certain little things to the guitar, it's allowed the guitar to stay in tune better. And that's why when you have like a Floyd Rose, you have the locking nut. And the strings lock on the nut here, and they lock down here on the bridge. It's called a double locking system. And the reason why that is so that the strings are not touching anything from point A to point B. Okay, that's why when you use the Floyd Rose and you're wanking on it back and forth, or anything like a Floyd Rose, it could be an Ibanez. You know, there's a lot of the manufacturers who make their own design of the Floyd Rose, but they're usually called a double locking system because the strings are locked at the nut and they're locked at the bridge. And when you use it, it's not touching anything. The strings aren't touching anything. Okay, and I'll show you what I'm talking about here with this guitar that I have. Okay. I have this guitar. This guitar is an Ibanez too, and it's got, it's not really a Floyd Rose, but it's a Ibanez, but it's like the Floyd Rose, okay? It's a little more complex here, and it's got the locking nut. As you can see, that it's got a locking nut here, okay? So this guitar, I could do, you know, some crazy stuff with it, you know. As you can see, I can bend the strings all the way down like that, you know, and it'll stay in tune. Plus, I can also make it go back this way too. Okay, let me see. Let me plug it in real quick. So I don't have it set up, but anyway, you understand what I'm talking about. Okay, so with the locking nut, the strings are locked here at the bridge, and they're locked here at the nut, and they're not touching anything. So you've eliminated the friction. That's the whole thing why the Floyd Rose works, is because there's nothing touching the strings from point A to point B. And on a regular guitar, like a Fender Strat, you know, the Jackson that you bought, this other Ibanez that I have here, you know, you want to think about eliminating the amount of friction as much as you possibly can, okay? And those are some of the things that you can do. Like I said, you can, I wouldn't really mess with the nut, you know, I wouldn't really do that, because if you mess it up too much, if you take too much out, you're going to have to replace it. It's going to be I wouldn't really mess with that. But what you can do, like I said, is put some of this lubricant in there, okay? Get some of this. I'll leave a link below in the description where you can get this. This is just one brand, but this is a pretty good brand. It's called Big Ben's Nut Sauce, and it allows you to help lubricate the strings. And you can lubricate them here at the nut, you can lubricate them down here at the bridge, and the more they're lubricated and they can move back and forth, the better off you're going to be with keeping the guitar in tune, okay? Now another thing that makes a big difference with the guitars with these kind of bridges and the whammy bar is the springs in the back, okay? If you usually have like a cover plate right here, okay? If you take that off, you'll see it's got springs in the back like this, okay? Now I've only got two on here because I kind of got it set up that way. But this makes a difference too on whether the guitar stays in tune, okay? So if you're having a problem with the guitar staying in tune when you use the whammy bar, that's something to think about too, okay? Is you might need to either loosen these two screws, and they just work with like a Phillips screwdriver, okay? There's two screws right here. And what they do is they pull the tension, the springs cause tension on the bridge to go this way, and the strings on the other side cause it to pull this way. So that's something to think about as well too, okay? So if you're having a problem with that, I would check your springs in the back, maybe take a Phillips screwdriver and tighten them up a little bit, and it'll help keep your bridge flat against the guitar, the body. And then that way when you use it, it'll come back to its proper tuning, okay? So those are just some things that you can do to, you know, get these kind of guitars to stay in tune. Ultimately, what you want to do, if you want to use the whammy bar a lot and do like, you know, dive bombs and all that stuff, like Van Halen and Dimebag Darrell and those kind of guys, you know, I would recommend saving up some money and getting a guitar with a locking nut, okay? Because that's going to make a huge difference, okay? Even then, they still need to be set up properly, because It's a system, and you got to understand how the system works. And once you understand it, I've learned it a lot from just taking guitars apart and putting them back together and things like that. And it's a system, and if you learn the system, you take some time to learn it, you'll get it. All right, so there we have it. A few tips on how you can help keep your guitar in tune with the whammy bar. And like I said, you know, like a Fender Strat and stuff, those weren't really designed to play like, you know, Van Halen and those guys. They just weren't designed for that. People weren't playing like that back in the 50s when that guitar came into production, you know. That's why the Floyd Rose was really invented, because, you know, you try to play it like that, you know, do crazy stuff with the whammy bar, throws the guitar out of tune, okay? But like I said, if you use those few tips, okay, think about string friction. That's the main thing that you want to think about, is getting rid of the string friction, okay? You lube up the nut so the strings will go through there better. I would get those, you know, those string trees, the roller ones, so that the strings can glide through there easier, so they don't get hung up, because that's where it happens. You use the whammy bar and it changes the tension on the strings, it loosens the tension on the strings, and then they get bound up in the nut, or they get caught up in the string tree, you know, things like that. Another thing I was going to tell you too is I usually try to put my strings on a certain way too. When I put them through there, I try to bring them around so that the string actually gets pinched on there, and that's kind of my own thing. Another thing I was going to say too is try locking tuners too. That's another thing that I forgot to mention. Locking tuners, those are always a good way to, that way you can lock the string on the tuner itself, okay? Sometimes those don't fit the holes though. That's something you might run into. So, but look into it. If they fit the holes, you know, or you'll have to drill your holes out bigger. Sometimes you know, they just don't fit. They're too big. So, but that's something to think about. You know, you can, I wouldn't recommend, you know, drilling holes in your guitar and, you know, filing out the nut and all that stuff. That's a little bit more advanced. You know, I've done some of that stuff, but just what I would say is, you know, look into some locking tuners. That's going to help. Lube up the nut every time you replace the strings. Make sure you got some good strings on there, good fresh strings, because, you know, when strings lose their tension, then they start not staying in tune, okay? So make sure you got some good strings on there. I would keep the nut lubed up. I would lube up where the bridge is, and maybe change out those string trees, and that alone should help you to keep the guitar in tune when you use the whammy bar. And if you want to use the whammy bar more, like say Van Halen, or, you know, Randy Rhoads, or Joe Satriani, or Steve Vai, or somebody like that, I would highly recommend you get you a guitar that's designed with those kind of, like a Floyd Rose setup, like an Ibanez, you know, an Ibanez RG or something like that would be good, because those guitars are designed specifically for that purpose, and they'll stay in tune a lot better. Okay? All right, so thank you so much. I hope this helped you out, Nano, and anybody else who's watching this. And if you ever need any you know, help with your guitar playing, I do offer guitar lessons online and in person out here in Colorado. So if you're out here in Colorado, contact me. We can either get together in person, or we can do something remote, okay? And I offer lessons in acoustic guitar, electric guitar, bass guitar as well. I've got my books on my website, so check those out too, because those will really help you out a lot. You know, I've got books on electric guitar, you know, how to play guitar solos, guitar modes, how to get started, just, you know, how to improve your rhythm guitar playing, you know, all kinds of stuff, good chords and everything, okay? So check those out. You can find them on Amazon. You can find them in my eBay store. If you buy them in my eBay store, I'll sign you a personally signed author copy, okay? So have yourself a good one. I hope this helped you out. Let me know if you have any questions, comments below. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. Keep practicing, and you have yourself a great day. See ya.